and I get mad. And so I go physical and grab this kid, and I'm much stronger than him, and I'm on top of him, and I'm winning this fight. And he says, "Get off me, fat ass." And it was as though I got hit with kryptonite, and I had to run away and cry. When I think about it now, it's like I was beating that kid up. I should have just continued to beat him up.
Exactly.
My guests today are Ian and Alisa Karmel. We're talking about their new book, T-Shirt Swim Club, Stories from Being Fat in a World of Thin People. You can find Ian on Instagram at Ian Karmel. Ian and Alisa Karmel, welcome to the American Glutton podcast.
Hello. Thank you
So
for
happy
having
to
us.
be here. Yeah, thank you for having us.
I am so excited about your book, T-Shirt Swim Club, Growing Up Fat in a World of Thin People. I think just the title makes me feel warm and cuddly and goes like, I'm going to relate to everything this guy says in this book and this gal.
Thank you. We thought the T-Shirt Swim Club would be immediately recognizable to anyone who might find this book remotely interesting at all.
100%. By the way, I've lost a lot of weight. I'm still in the T-Shirt Swim Club.
I'll throw it on now and then. Yeah.
Lifelong membership.
Yeah. Lifelong membership.
It's that weird little lie we tell ourselves when we're a kid, like right when we first find out we're fat, A, and then B, that like, A, that's also something that's a problem.
Yeah.
Is that we think putting a T-shirt on will somehow convince people that we're not fat.
Right. No, there is that period of the 80s, all those movies I love so much, but the whole point was to pour water on a gal's T-shirt.
Yeah.
And that was how you got away with seeing stuff that you weren't allowed to see. And then we're doing that with the cognitive dissonance that we're hiding something.
Right, exactly. Somehow we held these two ideas in our head at the same time. It's the wet T-shirt paradox of chubby little fat dudes.
You said something, Ian, that I think is important because like the only memory I have pre-fat, to understand that I was fat was like 4 years old at the beach with my dad. No, I didn't even understand what a body was. There was not like this thing I have or this thing that's me. I just existed. And the next memory I have, I'm 5 years old and it is explained to me that I'm fat and that this has to get fixed. And the next memory I have at the beach is sitting sullenly on a towel because the idea of walking from the towel to the water and people seeing me is shameful.
Yeah, dude.
What was your experience? Because you summed it up. There is a before we knew, and then there's an after, and after sucks.
The after sucks. I barely even remember the before. I remember I have pictures of me at that age, like at pool parties when I'm like 6, 7 years old, where I'm like shirtless, having a great time. You know, you got the the popsicle, the popsicle 5 o'clock shadow on your face just from running around. And I remember one of the first times, although I think it happened like a bunch. I remember being on the playground at grade school and just getting into some sort of, I'm sure like wall ball centric feud with another one of the kids, and him just pointing. He's like, "Oh yeah, well you're fat," and just being like, "Oh damn." So people know that's a thing. Yeah. Okay, that's a thing. And it can be used against me. Shit. Okay. All right. And that began a 30-year-long journey of dealing with it that I guess still isn't over. But yeah, I think it was on the grade school playground first, and then I don't even remember how I found out about T-shirts at the pool. Maybe seeing other fat kids and being like, I guess that's what we're supposed to do.
That's what we do. Yeah,
it's like
cover
how
it
bangs
up.
spread. Yeah, where it's like one girl sees another girl with bangs, and it's like, we're doing bangs. Okay, it's bangs this summer. All right.
Yeah. And Alisa, you're a psychologist. What insights can you bring into this?
So working towards becoming a psychologist, to be super accurate here. No, it's okay. It's just in this field, we got to be really picky about that. It's crazy that we, as young as 3, can start to identify that we're fat. Yeah. And that it's not okay that we're fat. As young as 3, Dr. Harriger did amazing research in this area. She actually did a quote for our book, so she's awesome. And it's perturbing that like you can be that young and learn, oh, this is not okay. At 3, you're supposed to be like creating popsicle messes at that time. Like it doesn't matter what happens to the popsicle, right? Anyway. So knowing that gives a lot more understanding and compassion, because that's how young we start to figure out like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to look like. This is how I do look like. I remember for me, that Ian was playing football and I was a cheerleader, not for him because he was 4 years older than me, but it looked cool. Like my brother's cool. He plays football. There's cheerleaders. That's what the girls are doing. Okay, so I'm going to cheerlead. And I remember being scrutinized because I was the fat cheerleader. And they were like, you're not supposed to be doing this. You're not supposed to be dancing around as a fat person. I was very confused because I'm like, I'm actually like way more gregarious than you. I got way more like going on here. Like you need to go sit your ass down on those bleachers while I'm the cheerleader. You know, like it was confusing to me because I had the personality.
That somber, ultra cool, boring cheerleader who's just a stick and barely moving. Fuck those girls.
Yeah, fuck yeah, go, I guess. Yeah. Right. I love that you use the word gregarious and perturbing, like within a 2-minute span, as if we need any more proof you're a doctor.
Right. I'm sold.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, finally cheers.
Yeah, it is weird, and being called fat too. I can remember really being quiet and withdrawn, and kids horsing around, and I very much tried to stay out of that because I didn't want attention drawn to myself. And one day there was something they were doing with like dried up glue. They were pretending it was boogers, and like so you'd get this piece of dried up glue rubbed on you, and then you were gross. And I remember sitting hoping this didn't happen to me, and then it did, and people are laughing, and I get mad, and so I go physical and grab this kid, and I'm much stronger than him, and I'm on top of him, and I'm winning this fight. And he says, "Get off me, fat ass." And it was as though I got hit with kryptonite, and I had to run away and cry. When, you know, when I think about it now, it's like I was beating that kid up. I should have just continued to beat him up.
Exactly. He needed some street justice.
Yeah.
The doctor may disagree with us, but I really like, or maybe not. But dude, I had the same experiences where they will belittle you. And I'm sure them making fun of you with the dried boogers thing, they connected it to you being fat somehow anyway, where they're like, you're fat, so therefore you're disgusting. You will eat anything, so therefore, of course, you're eating boogers. We don't even need to do the fake ones for you. So they attack you on that. You defend yourself with like the one advantage that you have in the world, which is like being bigger, you know? And then they're like, what are you going to do? Sit on me? Like they take your legs out there. You're fat if you do, fat if you don't. They just like it doesn't matter. It's so terrible, man.
Yeah, it really is rough. Okay, well, what's the solution? How have you navigated this?
Well, I mean, for me, it was I developed a sense of humor from an early age, right? That was my, and I don't know that it's a solution as much as it is a life raft that hopefully you can jump in that gets you to a place where you can find a solution. Sometimes childhood, for me, feels like you're on, like, you know what I mean? It did feel like you're a bit on a sinking ship, or you're like in a building that's on fire and you're like, oh my, also joyful. I also loved my childhood, but at times it's like, oh my God, I can't deal with my identity being the fat kid. I just have to, I can't, at least not in a healthy way. I at least have to take some ownership of my humiliation, right? Where it's like, if they're going to make fun of me for being fat, I'm going to make fun of me for being fat, and I'm going to do it better than them because I know, you know, like, because I'm living this. So I'm going to be funnier than they. I'm going to make the joke before they can. I'm going to make them laugh so they like having me around. And I'm at least, if this is going to happen anyway, I'm at least going to participate in it, right? I'm going to be a willing participant and not a victim. So that was kind of how I dealt with it as a kid. And then, you know, eventually you get to the point, for me, it wasn't until I got a little bit slimmer that I was able to sort of take a step back and examine my own hand in my self-destruction, right? But I do kind of think like whatever it takes, hopefully it's healthier for kids now, but I jumped in a lifeboat and got as far away from it as I could until I was so far out to sea that I was like, oh no, I'm alone here. I need to do some examination and get to a healthier place.
I do think kids are better off. Do either of you have kids?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't. She does. Yeah.
So I listen, I think you can always improve. I don't believe in absolute. So I think that you can continue to improve. But like from what I've seen, I see little girls who in my childhood would have been absolutely ridiculed, who are walking around in midriff shirts with a lot of pride. And that like, yeah, whatever health metrics you can posit are ideal. That gives me so much hope and faith in humanity that little girl is experiencing pride. And like, I don't think any human being exists without experiencing some shame or something like that. And I always mistakenly think of myself as abnormal and other people as normal. I'm also sober, so there is a whole that's a normal person who can have a glass of wine. I can't have a glass of wine, and it's not fair to call anyone normal because everybody's experiencing problems and issues in their own way. But like that problem was so devastating for me as a kid that I'm so happy to see that there are some kids nowadays that are not experiencing it in the same way that I'm experiencing it, or I didn't experience it.
I mean, Alisa, Alisa deals with, you work with, kids.
Deal with them.
You deal with them. You work with kids who, have body image issues and disordered eating and all that stuff to this day. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard. I agree to some sense that there's improvements. I will say that what we didn't have in our upbringing and our fat hating days was social media.
Yeah.
And that I am so grateful for because with the level of anxiety I have currently and had, especially around my fatness growing up, that would have probably destroyed me. Because the amount of an anonymity behind the hate and the frequency that you can access it. And Ian believes that's a great thing. No, I love Zoom.
We actually wondered if it was going to do that.
We were talking about it before. It did it again. Just so
I know
listening.
how to turn it off.
It's the Zoom emojis.
I just learned it. Anyway, that used to show up in therapy appointments at really unideal times. It was not working. But what I'm realizing is that these young kids need to learn how to monitor their use and how to be aware of, okay, when I see this information from the cheerleader who's making rude comments behind some pseudonym, or when I receive, this statement from this person over here in their skinny body that I'm not in, how do I manage that? And so I feel like in my position, as the provider, as the healthcare provider, I have to teach them how to defend themselves, how to hold their space and feel okay about their space despite being told it's not okay from all these sources. And that's not something we had to deal with. We just turned off the TV, right? Or left the mall or what have you. So I think it's just tricky. And if parents can learn how to provide that support and those confines for how to teach their kid how to navigate that stuff, I think it can be okay. But not every parent knows how to or feels comfortable doing that. And that can be tricky. I mean, there's not like one right way.
Yeah, it is very tricky. A lot of my, I used to posit that diet was the solution, that weight was the problem, and that if I lost the weight, the problem would be lost. I treated my behavior as though it was an acute thing rather than a chronic thing. And it's taken a lot. And for me, like the most important thing has been like being kind to myself, and kindness, being a father, is not necessarily always letting my kids do what they want to do. A 2-year-old doesn't get to play with the razor blades because they say they want to play with the razor blades. A lot of my life was spent avoiding discomfort. However, I will say, to your point about social media and why it's so profoundly hard, is sometimes the discomfort that reinforced the idea that I was bad or shameful, I would seek that out because it just reaffirmed how bad and shameful I was. Do you know what I mean? Like, if somebody's whispering about you, it's very hard for me to just walk away and go like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want them to know I'm listening, but I want to hear it. I want that those hurtful words to make me feel terrible about myself.
It's the don't go in the basement thing in like scary movies. You know, it's like, don't go in the basement. You know, something bad is in that basement. There's like groaning and a red light, you know, coming out from under the door, and you still can't help it. You're like, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
Well, it's our desire for information. And Michael Easter wrote a book, Scarcity Brain. And I think he talks a lot about this. Like, we have this scarcity mindset of like, we want to know more. We want to connect more. We want more, more, more. We don't know what enough is. And I feel like that can put a lot of children and adults in that position where they're seeking more, even though they've already had enough. Like, they need to take a minute and process and learn how to cope and have those skills. And then they don't. And so then they seek more. And that can create a monster, that can create the pain. And then that can lead to maladaptive, unhealthy behaviors.
Maladaptive, another good word. Alisa.
Another good word. And what's like a real world application of maladaptive? Is that like when I would eat an entire pint of Ben & Jerry's over the sink?
If that's what you consider it, I mean, some person might actually like that. Like, you know, I mean, maybe it's better than the gallon. Maybe having a pint is actually improvement.
That's right.
Yes. The pint is moderation for someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank God for Halo Top and Enlightened.
Oh,
now we can have the whole pint.
My cats are addicted to Halo Top ice cream. Anytime my wife pops open a Halo Top, they're like eyes go wide. It's crazy. And then they'll like get it. They'll knock it out of her hand. Not even normal ice cream. So whatever's in Halo Top, it has some sort of like Manchurian Candidate activating effect on the cats in my household.
That's amazing. It's got to be all the
so
protein. Cool. Yeah.
I'm putting it out there. If anyone else has that experience with their cats, hit me up at Ian Karmel on any social media platform. I need to find a community.
What are some of the other experiences in your book? What are some of the other things that we can relate to, similar to that T-shirt club? The T-shirt club is pretty dead on. It's such a good title.
Thank you very much. It's I'll say one thing that are like these sort of parallel and contrasting experiences I had in middle school, where I think when you're sort of the pitfalls of everyone treating you like you're the same, and also the pitfalls of everyone treating you like you're different happening simultaneously. There was this thing in 7th grade. I think they might have gotten rid of it because Elisa's 4 years younger than me by the time, and we went to all the same schools. And I think maybe by the time you got to Meadow Park, they had gotten rid of this. But we had this gymnastics unit. We had this gym teacher who was like a straight from Central Casting, like super in shape dude, probably like 60 years old, like military mustache, you know, balding head, but like T-shirt tucked into sweatpants, sort of like kind of guy who like probably wrestled and like, you know, in World War II just ran on the beach without a gun. Like that kind of guy was teaching our gym classes. And he was very supportive, very like, but like in a very like, you can do it. You're not any different than anyone else. You got this. We're not leaving until you do a pull-up, like kind of guy. And we had this gym class and a gymnastics unit in it where everyone was running the vault. So it's got that long runway and then sort of a springboard and then like an Olympic vault that you had to go over. And that was sort of you're not leaving this class until you run the vault. And some people did it like on the second day. Those kind of people who are genetically blessed where they can just, you know, do a backflip and then go about, you know, crushing beers or what, you know, later on in life. And it got towards the, you know, back third of the class and I still hadn't done it. In middle school, I weighed 300 pounds, maybe more. You know, I was a big dude. And he kept badgering me. And his goal was like, hey, you're not any different than anyone of these other kids. I believe in you. You can do this. You can run this vault. And just in my head, knowing physics and the physics of my body, I was like, it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea to turn a 300-pound kid into a missile. Please, can I do anything else? And he just kept like, you can do it. You can do it. And it got to the point where his encouragement became humiliating. Right. I don't know if this is, I also experienced this in football when like we were running, you know, 40, you know, 100-yard dashes. And by 23, I was starting to lag behind the group and they would just be like, you can do it. You can do it. And I'm like, I know I can. Stop yelling at me and pointing out that I'm lagging behind everyone. But eventually this gym teacher got to the point where he had talked. He's like, all right, today's the day. And he had broken me. I was so tired of him pointing it out in front of the rest of the class that I was like, all right, we're doing this. And he's like, you know what? I'll catch you. I'll be on the other side waiting for you. God. And I was like, I don't know if you want to do that, but okay. And I could not talk him out of it. And so I got to the end of, the beginning of the runway, and I started running down it. And the gym teacher was down there, like arms, like he was like honestly a catcher waiting for someone trying to steal home, like that kind of body position. And I came running down it, and I hit the springboard, and it launched me into the air. And I'm flying through the air, and I see this look on his face, like the realization dawning on him about what he had agreed to, that this 300-pound projectile was like hurtling towards him. And I swear to God, like I experienced joy in that moment. Because I was like, I'm like, he is about to get immediate comeuppance.
Yeah.
Like for
he asked for it.
He asked for it. Here it is. And I hit him, and he went down like a Guess Who tablet, like wonk, like that, like so fast. And I was laughing, and then the class was laughing, and I didn't feel like they were laughing at me for being fat. I felt like they were laughing at the teacher for getting,
He demanded this.
He demanded it. He demanded it. And, he blew his whistle, which I don't know, he had a whistle, and that class was over. And I thought that I was like, that's a good lesson there. At the time, it was mostly funny, not even really that traumatic of an event. The trauma was all leading up to trauma, which is a word I think maybe it's weird that we use that to describe someone who served in war and then also like getting made fun of a gym class. But I guess this was a lower grade sort of trauma. And it was someone believing in you but not hearing you when you say like, hey, I'm different. My body's different. This is maybe something I shouldn't be doing. I think maybe is something that people who, are fatter can relate to is people being like, hey, you're not different. And whether that's you need to fit into this airplane seat, or we need to, weigh you with a doctor, or, the first things first, like, no, sometimes different conditions is the wrong word, but different realities for people means different realities,
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be acknowledged. So for me, that was something where I was like, I think people are going to be able to relate, if not to exactly being made to run the vault, at least having people who refuse to acknowledge that you might have different needs in life,
Yeah. Yeah. Like maybe just run that distance, which it sounds like you had no problem with, but like, it is wild. It is wild that the standards are universal and kind of cookie cutter in that way.
Yeah. I was like in pretty good, I was, medically what doctors told me over and over again, overweight, but I was in pretty good shape. I played 4 sports a year and, like was really good at football and all those things, but you're right. They use the same metrics, these like presidential order of fitness. You got to do these pull-ups. You got to have this deep knee bend, all this stuff all the stuff that you're as a fat person designed to lag behind at,
Yeah.
Well, we were totally active. I mean, we were always in sports, and we ate 90s foods, which is, attempts at being healthy because that's what the world was obsessed with, but actually making us fatter. And we had genetics, which weren't really on our team. So like Ian and I were kind of set to have these experiences, whether or not we wanted. Like it didn't really matter how many wind sprints that his coaches made him run, or how many, I finally found rugby and thought that was much better for me because I was actually able to be that gregarious self and kick asses and like feel powerful and good about my body, which before that never happened. But it's just really finding your stride, like finding where you do well. And I think that's true for every population that isn't popular, is like, where do you feel that you can excel? Where can you feel like you can actually thrive and enjoy life? And I think that's another kind of drive home is find joy, like find places that you can be happy, find places that you can feel your identity. Because a lot of people try to compromise their identity to try to fit a mold so that they're accepted, because acceptance is super powerful, especially when you're young. But if you're being accepted as a version of yourself you aren't, then that creates a whole other host of problems.
And it can also be very dangerous to not acknowledge that you are an individual and different. Like it wasn't until, I try to be very careful about talking about like weight loss and losing weight. Like it wasn't until I confronted that I was living in a very unhealthy way. I'd spent my entire life wanting so badly not to be different than anyone else, right? And that gym teacher was not alone. I also wanted that. I didn't want anyone else to think I was limited by being the fat guy, or that I had a different rules for how I should have been living as the fat guy. And that went into my adulthood when it was like, I would hang out with friends and we would eat the same meal from Panda Express, and they would weigh 180 pounds, with a 6-pack. And I would, if I opened a fortune cook, I didn't even have to eat it. I would gain weight, right? Like I would, from driving past the McDonald's, I would gain weight. These were my realities. And I was just like, I'm not different. And that went from me wanting to like date people and being like, I'm not different. I could date a girl, who my friends would date. I'm no different than them. But it also went to me not acknowledging that I might need to have a different relationship with food than they do, because the way my body reacts to it, and the cycles I imagine you might be the same way. I'm a binger. I binge eat. I binge when I'm not sober, but I barely drink anymore. When I did, I was a binge drinker.
Yeah.
Binge eat. I binge video games. I binge
everything to the extreme.
Everything to the extreme. I binge feel. I would binge in relationships. I binge loved, and I didn't want to acknowledge that I was different, that I was an individual, and that I need different rules for myself to get to a healthy place. Because I had raged against this idea that I was different for so long that it wasn't until I embraced that things got better.
Yeah, it becomes so tricky too with food. Like alcohol and drugs are, being abstinent. I don't want to downplay it and say it's easy. It certainly wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Drugs were the most immediate distraction from my mental and emotional and physical discomforts. And they were like flipping a switch where it was just like, I can go out and exist and be detached from all the garbage that I feel immediately. So quitting those was very, very difficult. But then I'm abstinent, and it's like a black or white situation where this is now how I live. If I want to live, those were going to kill me right away. I was literally on death's door. And then there's food where it's like, you got to eat. You can't be abstinent from food. And it becomes very tricky. I grew up in Los Angeles. I was an actor. I mean, I went to school with other kid actors. And the thing that was so appealing to me was that nobody in school saw these kids for who they were. They were the character on the TV show. So there was like this immediate shield that they had from anybody actually looking at them. That was so appealing to me. And then when I first started acting, there was this weird experience I had where the characters were all meant to be fat. And in the moment of acting was the only time my body was correct, because the character I'm playing is fat. And it was like such a relief for those brief instances that I was no longer wrong for being fat. I was right. And then I got the added layer of, it was like wearing the t-shirt where I'm not the car wreck that people are rubbernecking about. They maybe saw me on TV. This is a miraculous relief. I don't know what we do about any of it. Trauma, I have so many theories and I don't know that any of them are correct. And I wonder if cause like you said, like a guy in war is experiencing trauma. Life has become really easy. Day-to-day life, we can sit and people make huge livings playing video games.
Right.
That is not the life of people were living in the 1940s, where procuring food and shelter were still on the docket for day-to-day life. And I wonder if in this modernity, getting made fun of at school when everything else has become so much easier is producing legitimate trauma. I don't know.
Yeah, first of all, as far as trauma goes, it is a diagnosis that is pretty. It's very broad. Like there are so many different ways that you can capture it, and it's all about the person's experience. And I'm grateful for that, because two people can be in the same experience, and one person walks away traumatized, the other person it was nothing, right? Which is fascinating, but that's just how our brains and our bodies have evolved, that we all just experience things differently, and that can be a whole nother discussion. But when it comes to our life nowadays, we've evolved quicker than our brains have caught up, if that makes sense. So we're in this phase of abundance where things are easier than they've ever been before, and our brains don't really know what to do with it. They're like stuck in time, if you will, and they're still working up to, how do I deal with this like table full of food? How do I deal with the fact that I can order any meal I want at any time as long as I have like a signal, right? Like it's just, it's catching up, and that's emotionally as well. I mean, being able to deal with the amount of information that we have access to is another thing. And I know I already talked about that earlier, but when our minds are being forced to be able to respond to things as quickly as we have access to, it can be triggering, it can be traumatizing, and it can create a lot of behaviors that may not actually be true to what we would do in other times, if that makes sense.
No, 100%. And I find all these studies utterly fascinating because they explain to me on a biological level why my behavior. Listen, I don't think it's 100% one thing or the next, but I do think there's a bunch of things that come together and produce me that if I can understand them more, they help me navigate them. And like the idea that for however many hundreds of thousands of years, the thing that killed us most frequently was famine.
Right.
And to understand that, like, okay, my body's fighting against that by consuming everything it can. Okay, that helps me navigate it. I understand that impulse a little bit more. I 100%, Ian, was a binger.
Yeah.
And when I was talking about, I guess I didn't get to this. I had so much to say based on what you said, but like, that is the thing I have to become abstinent from. Do you know what I mean? I cannot become abstinent from food, but I can recognize my urge to consume so much that I'm creating euphoria within myself. And that euphoria and seeking that euphoria is not healthy for me.
Absolutely. That it's for me, and I think maybe Alisa, it was for you as well. I know we've talked about this. It's a bit about changing your relationship to food to an extent where it's so tricky because there's no doctor who's going to be like, all right, just use whole cocaine. You know, just whole cocaine and not, you can intermittent fast with the cocaine just between noon and 8 or like whatever it is.
Right.
But where with food, you do have to get to that point where it's, where you start thinking about food like, oh, okay, let me maybe change my mindset of first thinking about it as either a celebration or a soothing mechanism, primarily, which for me it was for a long time. Long, stressful day at work. I used to have this thing, I called it the triple crown, where I would be driving home from work and I would order food on Postmates, and I timed it perfectly where I would order it, get home, get stoned, and then the food would show up. And if I could hit that 3 in that perfect order, I call it the triple crown, and I hit it almost every day. You know what I mean? Because it was just the soothing mechanism, the drugs, the food, all of it, just these soothing mechanisms for me. And then for me, it took a little bit of a binary where I had to be like, no, I'm only eating healthy for like a month exclusively. And I am only keeping that food in my house. And then, through listening to my body, you start to be like, okay, food as a fuel. And I actually do feel better if I eat less processed, more whole foods kind of things. And then I'd love to say it stuck after 30 days. Of course not. You fall back into it. It becomes a thing that you have a relationship with for the rest of your life. But if you can constantly be in pursuit of that reality of food as feeling better, as a fuel and as something, and not trading a life lived long for a life well lived. You can still have cake. You can still go out and eat lasagna. You can still, do all those things. But for me, it took like changing my mindset. And for you, like not binging that feeling. Exact same thing for me.
Well, yeah. And I want to say, I don't like for myself, people do this and I'm not critical of them doing it for themselves, but for myself, I don't want to moralize food. I don't want to think of food as good or bad, but just like you, I recognize very much how I feel when I eat ultra processed food versus whole foods. And I did spend years, and I think it's going to be 30 days, whatever it is for you, it's fine. But I spent a long time. I don't want to have any, A glass of wine is not on the table for me.
Yeah.
I can't do that with food, so I'm not going to do that with subcategories of food either. However, I will say like a piece of pizza is incredibly rare. It's like maybe a yearly thing.
Oh yeah.
And I mean like one time a year, just because of a piece of pizza doesn't do a whole hell of a lot for me. A whole pizza maybe does something for me, but eating a piece of pizza, it's just so hard to not have the rest of the pizza and then not be thinking about it for the next week. Like, oh, I know another pizza place that's great. I got to go there too. So it is, I agree with that. That binary for me was for a long time. And now it's just like very occasional. And I think you made a good point, like using food to enhance a good time, using food to soothe a bad time. That is a day-to-day fight for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. We went to a bar, my wife and I, who just walked by talking to one of our cats. We went to a barbecue like 2 days ago, right? And there was like protein and salads at the barbecue. So I ate that, but there was, like cheese in there too. And like stuff that I don't, not that there's anything wrong with cheese. Again, no moralizing, but stuff that for me tends to be, throws a little grease on the already slippery slope, right?
Yeah.
And like, so I was eating that and then I was like, you know what? I am going to have like a roll, like, and I ate that. And then I wish that had been enough, but then we did that. And then we went to a movie and I got a little candy at the movie. And then we went home after the movie and that should have been enough. It should, like Dianu, right? Like it should have been enough. I ate and ate and ate. And then I'm like at home and I'm like, well, today's already shot. So I'm like looking in the freezer, like, oh, do we have any, like a frozen chocolate bar, like something like that. And I'm like scrounging all over the place because it's never enough. It's weird. Also, it almost becomes this like permission where it's like today, you're Templeton the rat from Charlotte's Web. You're eating whatever you want. It's like that kind of thing. It's so weird.
It's so weird. And all the little things that get us that are unique to us. Like my wife, I never liked popcorn. I'm a hot dog guy. Yeah. And then as the previews expanded, I want to have my hot dog while the movie's playing. So I got to get 4 because I could get through 3 and it just, the previews get longer and longer. But my wife, when she goes on a diet, she's like, I can't go to the movies because that smell of popcorn fucks me up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Popcorn? Who the fuck wants popcorn? I want to eat 16 hot dogs.
Yeah.
But it's unique to all of us. That's the other thing that gets tricky is we have a multi-billion-dollar health and wellness industry where you have really learned folk saying, this is the solution for everyone. Just follow this routine and you will be cured of fatness. And fuck, man, I tried every one of them. And I could lose weight, but then it's not an acute thing. The weight comes back.
Yeah. And people don't ever get that individualization when they do have any of those attempts at whatever those diets are. That's why I say diets fail, not people, because they're not prescribed to you. They're not individualized. They don't know that you like the hot dogs and not the popcorn. Like they don't know that Ian comes home from a barbecue and goes to the freezer. Like they don't know those little details and they're never going to know those details. They're just like, here's your prescribed meal, figure it out, follow these directions. It's research-based, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. Shove that up your ass. That's not true. Like you need to back up and learn what the people are actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And for both of you, if that has something to do with the polarized thinking and that works for you, like you need to stick to that. And it can be slippery, as Ian mentioned, because if you open Pandora's box, who knows what's going to happen. But if you can know that about yourself and be kind about it and be real about it and be like, okay, Ian's going to this barbecue. What do we need to do to prepare for that barbecue? This is going to be difficult. It's like putting an alcoholic at a party. Like, what do we do with this alcohol? Okay, the table's over there, the alcohol. Do I need to stand away from it? Do I need to sit down? Do I need to bring my own drink? Do I need to bring a red cup that looks like I have alcohol in it? Do I need to be fed before? Do I need to be like, you just have
do
to
I need to not let them play Bob Seger at the barbecue?
Because I'm fuck, man. Bob Seger at the barbecue. And then you want the chicken wings and the beer and the Coors Light. That's the trick, man.
The triggers. Yeah. You're so right, Alisa. You have to be more cognizant and be more aware, which is You know, it's so weird because that, like, to connect it back to the thing I was saying earlier about not wanting to feel different, not wanting to spend so much time feeling validated and feeling accepted. And then all of a sudden you realize you're like, I do have to treat myself. I have to be very realistic with myself about my triggers and my reality. You know, you're so right, Elise. It is those things.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like
food.
too, like Ian and I, we, at least from my memory of it, is that most of my success with my weight change was during the pandemic. And I know for a lot of people, the pandemic was sit at home and eat and eat and eat because I'm bored. I have all these feelings. I have all this uncertainty. I'm going to eat. I'm soothing. I'm soothing. For me, it was, I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know if the world's going to end. I'm terrified, but I don't have to deal with any of the social pressures.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually be able to control my eating and control my environment. So that's actually when I had the most success because I didn't want any Postmates coming to my house. I didn't want them to bring their germs. I didn't know like where they were. I didn't want to go and see anybody. And that's when I have trouble with food, is when everybody else is eating around me and I want to be part of the pack and eat what they're eating. And so having that isolation was incredibly helpful for me to identify what my challenges were and to build that awareness and go, oh, this is why I eat. And that's when I had the most improvement in my relationship with food, because I was able to actually interact with the relationship without all the noise of everybody surrounding me.
I am so with you. I'm blanking on his name. I think his last name's Means. He seems like a really well-intentioned guy. He used to work for Coke, I believe, and now he's like an advocate for like the food industry is poisoning you. And there's a lot of data and stats about societies that introduce ultra-processed food, and you can see the weight goes up in these societies.
Yeah.
And his point is like, we should regulate this stuff the way we regulate cigarettes. And, you know, anecdotally, I spent many years not eating sugar and processed foods and still was very fat and still binge ate. I can binge eat potatoes and olive oil. You know what I mean? I can binge eat steak. I can eat 5,000 calories of meat every day. So people who come and just say, go carnivore, I'm like, I'm really glad if that worked for you. Or vegetarians. Yeah, I was vegetarian for 2 minutes. I went to Veggie Grill every day and ate vegan cheeseburgers, you know?
Exactly.
Like, this is not, my wife drinks alcohol. We spent years with no alcohol in the house because it was tough for me. And then we were in Europe and she wanted to go to a winery and I sipped olive oil and was like, I'm okay. And suddenly she's having wine at dinner and it has not been a problem for me. But that's because I spent a lot of time working on myself. I just don't know if I would love to hear your thoughts, Alisa, on this, of the urge towards societal change. Like in the way that I'm happy that little girls are walking around with more pride, and I don't know their experience because I'm not going up to them and talking to them because I don't want to put their attention on this because it's not there and it shouldn't be. Something has shifted socially. And of course, there could be improvements. But like when there are people saying we should regulate processed foods, what do you feel about that?
It's not, I don't think it would change anything.
I don't either.
I mean, I understand the intention, and I think that we need to have systemic changes, but I think those changes need to come from more the people on the field. Like, for example, the teachers, the mental health, the medical providers, the politics, like trying to have ways to educate people on how to interact with food, how to, I mean, like, I remember when I was in school, we were talking about like the food pyramid and shit. Like that didn't do anything for me. I was like, oh, okay. So I like the things at the top of the pyramid. Like, so can I just flip it? Like they didn't talk to me about how to interact with food emotionally. They didn't talk to me about how to feel about my body. They're just like, this is the anatomy of the male. This is it was so unhelpful. So if they could take those opportunities to be a little bit more helpful of how to be in this world, I think that's going to be far more better than putting restrictions on what's available and what's not available. And people are just going to break the law. Like people are just going to go and get the food they want. It's just going to be like,
we'll have Dorito speakeasies.
Right, yes. Exactly. Yes. Like, it hasn't ever been success. Why would it be successful for food? It's like, that's going to create more problems than good, in my opinion. I think we need to talk to the people who have influence. We need to talk to the folks that have lived it and learn from it. I mean, wisdom is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
talk to one of us about it. Like, what has our experience been, and what did you have to learn? Oh, I binge eat. Okay, what do you do to stop binge eating? What do you do? Oh, I need to remove the food, but what else do you do?
Yeah.
Like, there's work that's being done when the food is removed, and that's the work that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Anxiety.
Yeah. I've gotten really into embracing discomfort. It's so awful, but I find that like anytime I'm thinking of taking my mind off how I feel with something else, I just go like, okay, let's bring it. What is this discomfort? Let me investigate it a little bit. Am I okay? And I keep asking myself, am I okay? And sometimes I'm not okay, but I know I will be. I know.
And then when you're not okay, and then you've sat in that not okay, like how long can you be not okay for? Like what happens to end the not okay?
Well, that's the point is I know that when I'm not okay, it's not a permanent thing because I've been way less okay than I find myself today. In the past, you know, I had congestive heart failure, was a 500-pound junkie. I was not okay.
Yeah.
And I'm okay today. You know what I mean? And being not okay has become something I actually try to search out now. You know, doing difficult, uncomfortable things, I find I feel better afterwards.
And when
avoiding them, I don't.
When I work with folks who are dealing with binge eating, there's a little exercise I do with them, activity I do with them, where I ask them to kind of break apart that binge cycle and identify like they usually are not feeling okay from something. And then to escape that feeling and find relief, they find a behavior, which for most of the people that come to me, it's food. And then they engage in that behavior. And a lot of people have like specific binges. Like I go for this when I'm feeling this not okay, this when I'm really not okay. Like it's like a prescribed set of binge episodes that they plan to indulge in. And then after that, they have this very temporary feeling, or I've noticed even just before the binge, this super temporary relief.
Yeah.
I'm the opposite of not okay. I'm great for a second. And then after they have that binge, they feel awful. It is worse than the not okay they were experiencing before the binge.
Yeah.
And for some people, that throws them back into the cycle again. And so what I try to get people to identify and kind of get connected with is that not okay before was less shitty than the not okay after.
That's right. Well, yes. And it's very similar with drugs. I'm uncomfortable. Drugs are the solution. Post drugs, everything is way worse. Coming out of, you know, by the way, I became a junkie because that feeling of coming off heroin was so awful that you're just trying to push that further and further down the road. And it's 1,000 times worse than the discomfort I felt in the beginning, you know. The need for immediate gratification is a hard one to kind of push off. But like, I go to the gym now, not because I have any real physical goals that I'm trying to achieve. I go to the gym because I almost never want to go. I'm doing something intentionally uncomfortable, and then I feel incredible afterwards. It's the best moment of my day. And I go always talking myself in, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel better. You're going to feel better. And that's what gets me there and through it.
Having worked out is the best feeling on earth. It's like, it's so good. And it's not even because it buys you permission where it's like, now I can have that whole pizza. I'm less likely to have the whole pizza after I work out.
Yeah.
It's nice to not have food be at the center. Like that's what I notice when I'm at the gym. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I'm feeling capable. Like I'm unstoppable. And then when the music's perfect, it's like, oh,
it's an amazing thing. Yeah, totally. and I do think, and this is something, you guys were athletic. I don't know if going to the gym was ever different. I was a guy who I quit high school at 14. And prior to that, I ditched every gym class. I just didn't go and just failed. Going to the gym has been number one, being a sober person, I like groups of like-minded people that I can associate with. And the gym, doesn't matter your weight. That's what people are doing at the gym. You are, if that's why you're going to the gym. I mean, I guess some guys go to pick up girls, which is not why I go, but like generally I think people there are of the same. I'm going to do something physically rewarding for myself. That's super key. I had to lose 150 pounds before I got up the nerve to go to the gym. And it is the most welcoming place. It's like going to an AA meeting for me. It's like, these are my people.
Yeah. It is I have the same experience like at mine. It's just really, really, nobody's that it's weird because when I was at my biggest 420 pounds, like I would go to the gym then and just lift weights, but I would like bench and I was strong, or I would do leg stuff, and nobody looked at, it's the place where I felt the least fat. It's so, because you could kind of meet yourself. I was like, one of the only places where I could sort of celebrate things about myself physically, where I was like, I am fat, but I'm strong, like, so I can do that. And I feel good about myself doing that. Doing a leg press, I feel good about myself doing that. Even 15 minutes on an elliptical, and I feel good about myself doing that. It is this weird sort of, it's acceptance. It's also an act of self-love.
Yeah.
In a really beautiful way. And I think that spurs feeling, good feelings from the inside, healthy feelings.
I think it depends on the fitness industry too. Like I think there's some gyms that as a fat person, I've tried to go into and felt incredibly judged. And like yoga, I've gone into some spin there've been a lot of places I've gone and I've been like, okay, I'm so sorry for interrupting your skinny party. Like I acknowledge that I'm like causing like issues here for you. So I had a lot of issues with that, but then I found other gyms, like I go to an Orange Theory now, and there's other women alongside me who are my size, and we're all loving it, So I think it also depends on the community that the gym creates, if that makes sense. Like
I totally agree. Yeah.
And so that's been important to me, is to find the place that I feel like I can kick ass in. And if I walk into a place and feel awful immediately, like leave. But that doesn't mean all fitness places will be like that. And that's something I had to learn as a fat person, was it wasn't just like fitness as a whole sucked. It was, I had to find the place that was welcoming to me.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid thing. I've been to yoga at my peak of fitness and felt very judged and not welcome. That is true, which is weird because I think yoga at the heart of it is all very spiritual and like Zen.
I think it's supposed to be. It's all the people co-opting Zen. It's like when you go to Erewhon. I used to work around the corner from the West Hollywood Erewhon for like 8 years, right? And I saw more fights happen. For anyone listening, Erewhon like makes Whole Foods look like 7-Eleven.
It is the Portlandia of Whole Foods.
It is. They sell. I'm not joking. $30 jugs of water, like $18 smoothies. It's like picture that. You're picturing the right place.
Yeah.
And I saw more fights break out in line and stuff there because it's all these people who they're fronting, they're like, they're co-opting and fronting, and they're not actually living that Zen life. They just want to purchase it. And I think there's a lot of yoga studios that have the same vibe.
Well, what's so weird? I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I think I'm older than you guys, but like my mom was obsessed with health food because that was going to, I think she was probably obsessed for other reasons, but it was going to cure me of fatness also. So we never ate, there was never sugar in our house. There was never soda. We maybe as a treat got Hanson's natural sugar soda a couple times a year. But the Erewhon, as it first existed, they couldn't afford to turn the lights on. There were only Sikhs and cancer patients who were on macrobiotic diets in there. It was dusty, and it was like a bulk bin. And then one of the Kardashians shows up one day with her TV show, and it's like, now it's just full of Bentleys and Rolls Royces, and everything's insanely expensive. It is wild, the transformation that store has gone through.
It's insane. The salad bar is like $18 a pound. You know what I mean? You're like, it's lettuce. I think it's the same lettuce I get at Ralph's. What are we doing?
Yeah. It really makes Whole Foods look like a mom and pop's operation.
It does. Yeah. We were eating sugar definitely in our head. We had Diet Coke. It was always Diet Coke. every, the gold cans and the silver cans. And then snack wells. Like we were kids when like the snack well way of where it was like, it's fat free. Don't look at any of the other ingredients. It's fat free like that. And I think we fully embrace that.
As well as the Totino's pizzas and frozen burritos. Yeah.
One of the very few diets as a child, I think I was put on this diet at 10, that I was very happy doing was, I think it was called OptiFast. It was a liquid diet. And the thing that was a relief to me was in that instance, I was allowed to have diet soda. The doctor told my mom he can drink as much diet soda as he wants. And I was like, I fucking got this.
Yeah.
Diet soda. We're not allowed regular, but let alone diet. And I can just drink it by the gallon. And I think I got through 2 weeks. And my mom, because she was like an Erewhon Whole Foods granola person, was like, the diet soda is going to give him cancer. He can't do this diet anymore. And I was like, no, but I'm losing weight. Like I'm actually doing this. That was one of my big childhood disappointments.
Yeah, that your mom had aspartame paranoia. Yeah, which may be well founded. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
Like the jury's out.
Yeah,
you can't win.
You can't win. Yeah, I don't like to. I like to drink water today. Like that's my preferred beverage. But if the mood hits me, I'll go for a Diet Coke and really enjoy the shit out of it. Maybe with a lemon wedge. That's a delicious beverage. You know,
that's a delight, a summer delight.
Yeah.
You can really plus that you get. I have friends who have those ice machines that do the ice that you get at like Sonic, where it's that
that's the best
little
ice.
pebbly. Oh my God. That can make tap water sing.
That's the only reason I liked Sonic was the ice.
This is fantastic.
They're floating on the ice. Now you can bring it home. You don't have to. Between that and the soda stream,
Yeah,
boom.
That's right. Ian and Alisa, thank you so much. I'm really excited about your book. Thank you for coming on and sharing your stories. I really appreciate you guys.
This was such a pleasure. Thank you for sharing with us. This was amazing. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
See you.